Things getting hot in Hong Kong. Hong Kong executives suspending subway service as violent protests against the Chinese Communist de facto rulers there heat up to the boiling point. Claudia Rosette, who covered the Tiananmen protests in 1989 as bureau chief for the Asian Wall Street Journal, has been covering today's modern-day freedom fighters, and she joins us now from Hong Kong via Skype. Claudia, has the violence that we just saw in those pictures in these protests and the government's response to them taken a turn for the worst?
Yes, largely because the government keeps effectively egging things on, because the government has given them basically nothing, just this blank refusal to do anything that has now tightened the screws. Hong Kong's people are protesting for freedom. They just lost more of that, including the shutdown of the subway, which basically here amounts to a curfew on the city. That's what they were trying to do.
Gary?
Hey, Claudia, Gary Smith here. Thanks for being on the show. Here's my question. I don't see this whole, if I was a resident of Hong Kong, the whole one country, two systems is out the window. I don't blame them for their protests. It's insane. Can this end any other way than in a civil war with quite actually military stepping in?
That's what's terrifying here. That's what's terrible for Hong Kong. It's getting harder and harder to see how, because the government is basically, it isn't one country, two systems anymore. The rules that are applying here seem to be China's, which are, there isn't a rule of law. There's a rule by edict. People are told what to do, and there is no recourse. And that's what they've run into. And that's what's driving this violence. There's no negotiation from the government. They're just telling them.
Claudia, sorry, if I can just ask you about the issue with the face masks. The government doesn't want the protesters to be able to wear them. The protesters have said that they wear them basically to protect their identity because they're scared. What are you hearing on the streets about that?
That's absolutely right. I mean, the problem is there's not a sense anymore. This government has violated so much public trust here that there's not a sense that they can rely on the government to give them a fair hearing or sort of to treat them fairly. They're hiding their identity effectively from the system that runs China, not the system that was supposed to be running Hong Kong. And that has them furious. People here are so angry. They're basically a free culture. And they are being treated now by Carrie Lam, their puppet chief executive, appointed effectively by Beijing, as people are in China. And that is creating this tremendous collision. And that is driving this violence. And the government is then responding with more violence. It's a very bad situation.
Claudia, this is Adam Lashinsky with Fortune in San Francisco. I want to be clear, my sympathies are 110% with the people of Hong Kong. But let me play devil's advocate. It's fairly obvious that one of the things the protesters have been doing is sending a signal to China that is, we don't want to be a part of you. And it's easy to understand how the Chinese would react to that. That's an existential attack on the Chinese Communist Party. And so I raise this by way of asking, is there any way to conceive of the two sides seeing eye to eye, given where they each stand?
Not right now. You would need, what's actually needed is concession by the Communist Party, which is violating China's treaty promises right now. You know, warning to anyone who would cut a deal with China, watch out. They don't honor these things. And the real problem here is that China's Communist Party does not tolerate free people living under its rule. And Hong Kong is a free culture, and they're asking for the rights and freedoms, not only that they were promised under treaty, but that are due to any human being. And what they're getting from China via its chief executive in Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, is just this complete refusal.
Yeah.
There was no negotiation. It's just, you do what we tell you, or what, or else, or it's going to get worse. That's
Claudia,
the problem.
we see these extraordinary pictures, including, by the way, the one where that fellow was shot in the chest by a policeman. I mean, we were able to freeze frame that. Are there any television stations in Hong Kong or newspapers, for that matter, that are free to publish or broadcast what we see here?
Yeah, almost miraculously, there's a government station, RTHK, on TV that's been doing a pretty good job. And then there's Apple Daily, a major newspaper. But these are really embattled outposts at this point. You know, Apple Daily's owner, Jimmy Lai, has come under threat over and over again from China, from thugs here. RTHK, the speculation is going forward, they're not going to retain the kind of voice they've been able to have. But beyond that, more and more, and the press has been just pressured, shut down. There's been this immense undermining going on here. That's part of why this whole thing blew up so much. It wasn't just one law they didn't like. It's that China has been making sure that people lose their jobs if they support the cause of freedom.
Claudia Rosette, we have to go, but please, a final warning to you. Take care of yourself. Great to see you here. Thank you for coming. Again, we wish you safe travels.